It's time for another episode of Let's Talk Business, featuring interviews with South Carolina business executives, community leaders, and government dignitaries. Let's Talk Business is a truly one-of-a-kind business-to-business talk show. And now, here's your host, longtime South Carolina business publisher, Rick Jenkins.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Business South Carolina. Actually, it is episode number 18, and I am glad that you're here with us. I am your host, Rick Jenkins, and whether you are checking out one of our videos on our YouTube channel or maybe you've just downloaded the podcast on Google or Apple or Spotify, I am glad you found us, and I'm glad you're here. Today, I am talking with Brian Kuney. Brian is a regional vice president for SCMEP, and before I get into the conversation with Brian, just a little quick information about SCMEP, and if you watch the episodes from time to time, you know we have a guest from these guys every now and then, maybe once a month or so, and so they're always sitting here and sharing tons of good information. SCMEP is the South Carolina Manufacturing Extension Partnership. There are 51 MEPs in the United States, and of course SCMEP resides here in South Carolina, headquartered in Greenville, but also with offices in Columbia and down in the Low Country. Now, SCMEP, their job is basically to assist manufacturers in any way that they need assistance. And that's boiling it down as simple as I can, but basically that's it. That's what it's all about. They are an affiliate of NIST, N-I-S-T, and that is the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and they operate under and are funded by the Departments of Commerce, both at the federal and the state level, to the tune of probably $3 or $4 million a year. Here is Brian Kuney, Regional Vice President, SCMEP. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Appreciate being here.
It's good to have you, man. I was telling you right before we came on that that Andy, your boss, was on here a little bit ago, and we talked about all kinds of great manufacturing things. And Adrian Temple has been on here before.
Yep.
And others. I don't want to start listing and then I'll miss somebody. But Brian, it is good to have you here. And so we're going to talk about Industry 4.0 today. Basically about technology in the manufacturing industry, but we're going to get to that in a second. So let's talk about you for a minute. You are not from South Carolina. Where are you from?
I'm originally from Michigan.
Okay.
I moved to South Carolina back in 2000.
Okay.
Oddly enough, I took a job with an automotive supplier in South Carolina, or it's just across the border in Georgia, but I ended up in South Carolina, living in South Carolina. So yeah, I tracked down south to get into the automotive industry in the state that I lived in.
Isn't that funny? When you were in Michigan, how close to Detroit were you?
I was probably about 65 miles southwest of Detroit.
You were right there.
Yeah, I was right. That was when I say I'm from Michigan, you say, you know Detroit, and then that's how you kind of know that.
Yeah,
you give
exactly.
You give them a little dinky town, then it's kind of like, I don't know where that's at.
Well,
or you put the mitten up, right?
I'm the same thing. I'm from Kentucky, and I say I'm from Lexington, even though I'm from that small little town outside of it. Now, being from Michigan, are you a Michigan fan or a Michigan State fan or what?
Yes, I am a Michigan fan.
You
Absolutely.
are a Wolverine.
I'm a Wolverine fan.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. And so you came here a couple decades ago and some change. Do you consider yourself a South Carolinian?
Yeah, I would not. Yes, I am a South Carolinian.
Okay.
Yeah, I like to think I like South Carolina. I like the climate. I like the fact that I don't have to shovel a whole lot of snow, but periodically you get some. But it's not enough to say that that's where I'm from. I just enjoy my wife and my family, the rest of the family, all still in South Carolina, and we just enjoy a lot of it.
You got kids?
Yeah, I have 3 children. Yeah.
Okay.
All are grown. On their own.
Off the payroll.
Off the payroll.
Good. Well, mine are too, so I know how you feel. I came to South Carolina in the early 2000s, so I've been here a couple decades, and I absolutely love it here, and I consider myself a South Carolinian as well. All right. Let's talk business.
Sure.
So, Regional Vice President, SCMEP, and there are 7 of you guys, and you all handle different geographics without South Carolina. Give me an idea of, number 1, what you do, and number 2, what is your geography?
Yeah, well, basically, as Regional Vice President, what we kind of do, we're more of the business development role, right? So, and we are broken up by regions, and the regions are kind of equally divided by maybe the number of manufacturers in those regions, right? So it kind of comes an equal spread. I cover now from Bamberg, Orangeburg, all the way up to Myrtle Beach. So I have a 10-county stretch along I-95. Prior to that, I was just covering the region of Charleston. And
Do you live in the Low Country then?
I live in Orangeburg, yes.
Okay, so you made
In the
the
very
trip,
northern
up
part
here to
of-
Greenville for this.
This
talk
and
today?
this and the manufacturing
And the conference, that's
this
right.
week, right?
That's
so
right.
I'm
Okay.
here for both.
Gotcha.
So I live in Orangeburg, have for a couple years now, and just kind of started to evolve from there.
Got it. And so give us an idea of what the regional VPs do.
Yeah, well, from a business development role, is really to promote the brand of SCMEP and to really start to uncover and reach out to the manufacturing base in those regions, right? A lot of the region I have is very rural, so it kind of goes underserved per se because there's not a lot of folks that go into there. Really is to help just start building their relationships with these manufacturers, let them know we're out there.
Right.
Us, what are the rest of the resources in South Carolina? Because you'd really be shocked at how many small to medium-sized manufacturers don't know what South Carolina has to offer them to help them prosper, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so we're the voice, right? And then as we're going through this relationship building, we're uncovering their constraints and kind of helping them with their needs and come up with this, as you said earlier, right, to help them through various ways, right? So we have a lot of offerings ourselves. We're strong manufacturing, and we've diversified, and really as portfolio grows is because the industry changes that much that we've found ourselves navigating towards those changes, right? We still have our bread and butter offerings like quality management systems and lean manufacturing, the things that kind of got MEP started or SCMEP specifically started on that track. But as time went on, we got into other areas to help because there was a lot of needs, right? Every company has, and not one company has the same need. That's what keeps the job kind of entertaining. It's not a flavor of the day that we have, for example. It's like I can go one company and go next door and they have a whole other set of problems, and it's like so you don't have the same. Yeah. You got to put different hats on and kind of work your way. But that's a lot of us internally. That's I think with MEP and especially myself, that's kind of my thing is I can quickly size something up. And then in my mind, I can start, taking things that might help it, right? I have a lot of years of experience, and I always say a lot of those years of experience 1 year at a time. So,
That's a good way to put it.
So I kind of didn't just stay at one spot for a long time, and
Yeah.
I stayed in the manufacturing sector for a long time, and I just feel like I have a lot of experience. And a lot of our RVPs and some of our field staff have the same experience. So.
Well, as I said at the beginning, you guys exist basically to assist a manufacturer in any way that they need assistance, and you touched on it, but it includes anything. If you're a manufacturer and you need some people to get forklift drive training, right? You can call our friends at SCMEP and they'll figure out how to help. Right? It's basically whatever you need. Now, of course, there are some things that are bigger than others, let's say, right? And you touched on lean, and which, as you said, was one of the things that SCMEP was founded upon, right? But now, as we go forward, the big thing is Industry 4.0.
Yeah.
Right? And so Industry 4.0, of course, is all the technology, and I'm just simplifying, right? All the technology associated with smart factories today, whether that's artificial intelligence or virtual reality or predictive analytics or whatever have you.
Right.
That's a huge part of what you're doing now, right?
Yeah, that's a big part because even though the technology has been around for a long time, right? Some of these have, and I myself personally think about it. I probably lived through Industry 3.0. Wasn't coined, wasn't phrased as 3.0.
Yeah.
It was just we were upgrading machinery, equipment, and designs and stuff to accommodate the technology that we know had available. It is getting so much bigger and faster in a shorter period of time. The cell phone is the really good example how fast that started and then where we're at today. Right, everybody's got one. Yeah. So that's just we evolved that way because I think of two reasons why. One is we still try to help companies become good at the basics, right? You find a lot of entrepreneurial type manufacturers. They're good at what they're doing, but they're still foundational and system-wise. They're just not real strong. So are they ready for technology? We don't know, right? So that's really what kind of some of our assessments help uncover so that they're going at it the right way, they're hitting the right approach, and that they're not becoming overwhelmed with look at you usually rattled off a whole mess of them, and there's a lot of companies that offer those, right? Which one do you use?
Yeah.
Right? How do I know that the shiny object coming through the door is the best shiny object for me? Right?
Exactly.
So that's kind of where for us it's kind of holistic. We don't really look at it and say, oh yeah, you need to have this, you need to have this. We have to look inside and say, what are you doing right? What are you doing wrong? Where you need to improve upon? And then if you've optimized a process as far as you can take it with your resources you have available, then if it's a technology, then let's explore what that technology looks like.
I would guess that, and you alluded to it, there are as many manufacturing facilities are out there. There are that many different types of things that you can probably assist with, right? And so if you're a BMW or if you're a Volvo, we know a little about auto manufacturing in this state, or if you're a Mercedes or whatever, you, of course, are probably all over the top technologies, and you have all kinds of people who can make sure you're there. But that is only a small fraction of a percent of what manufacturers look like in South Carolina. Most of them are small.
Right.
And they can't do all these technologies. One, they can't afford it, and not always can they afford it. And two, you can only do what you can do. Right. So when you go into those smaller manufacturers and you're talking about I-4 types of options for them, what's the things that pop up?
Well, for me, what pops up is always I'm going to go back to the basics. What are you doing from the basics that make you a good manufacturer? Lean is a good example. If I haven't like removed a lot of my manufacturing waste, and I haven't done things to optimize it, then Industry 4.0 technologies may not be the best fit at this moment, because you're going to put a technology into a process that doesn't optimize, and the outcome is still going to probably be the same. Right. So what I look for is some things I kind of look for is I look for things like standard work. Right? What's the training look like in your workforce? What is your leadership? What is the leadership style? What are the leadership and what's your strategies? So if you're a small company, maybe independent, small, if you're an owner, you're the president, you're the strategic guy, you're the everything, right? So they may not be as well versed in what they think is Industry 4.0 technologies themselves. They hear it. Not real versed in it, and so we kind of look for. I kind of look for things that there may be little clues to help me uncover. Like, yeah, you talk about that technology, but you just told me you did this, and it's not quite lining with that particular technology, right?
Yeah. So I would assume, I'm going to make an assumption that you talk to manufacturers quite often, and you think, you know what, you're talking to Mary at Company X, and you think, Bob at Company Y was doing that exact same thing and is having these exact same issues, and he or she just went through them. I bet you do a lot of putting folks together.
Yes, that's really kind of a strong suit, I think, of MEP is the referrals that we can make, and we can make the connection. Say, hey, you know what? There's somebody real similar to you. Maybe not. Maybe it's a competitor. Maybe they're a complement. But we don't have a problem making referrals and say, hey, they just implemented this technology. It's a benchmark. Let's benchmark against them. They just did it. Right. So why wouldn't you want to go and find out what went right and what went wrong? And then that way you can bring it back to your plant and figure out, and how to implement the particular tool itself, right? So that's the advantage, right? Because we get to touch more. You said there's a lot of manufacturers out there. How many of them can really go outside their four walls at any given time to explore? The big guys can, right? We know they probably have hundreds of myself inside the organization that can do these things, and then they can send them off to all the tech shows and all the things that kind of look like. Most of these small and medium size, they can't leave, right? They got production to do. They got to get their clients satisfied first. So yeah, right. It's like and there's a lot of them, right? That's not a small number. That's a large number in South Carolina.
Speaking of there are a lot of manufacturers, period, in South Carolina. I'm not sure exactly, but I'm going to guess around 5,000.
Yeah, the last number I saw was over 6,000.
Over 6,000 now. And yeah, so you're talking OEMs and then all the way down the line to the tier 2s and 3s and all kinds of suppliers and all kinds of stuff. You mentioned it a minute ago. We talked about, or you mentioned the assessment that you all do. Mm-hmm. One of the things that SCMEP provides is an assessment, an I-4 assessment,
Right.
to come in and take a look at your technology and what you're doing, all the things you've been talking about, and it doesn't cost anything.
Yeah.
How does that work?
Well, that's it. I know you've maybe Andy touched on it last time you spoke about our original assessment, which is a competitiveness review, right? That was no cost. That was to help uncover some of the constraints and things that an organization might be underachieving on, right? And kind of help them bring that up. 4.0 assessment kind of is the same thing, but it's going to be more focused on the technology side. So there's kind of like 5 areas that we kind of look at. We look at the leadership. When I say leadership, is how aligned is the leadership within the organization. If it's really small, like I said, you got 1 guy or 2 people, that's pretty easy to figure out what those 2 are aligned with. What's the strategy? Where do they want to take the company, right? And what are some of the things that they do yearly, bi-yearly, whatever the case may be? But what is the overall true north that they want to take the company at, right? And then we can uncover if technology is the right move at that moment, right? We look at the culture. Is the culture one of a employee empowerment? Because that's what you're going to have to bring along for the ride, right? It's not just 1 or 2 people. It's the whole organization has to come along for the ride on any kind. So when we were talking about lean in the back days, you got to have the whole company on board, or else you just got a few people just doing their thing. And then we take a look at the operations. We kind of look and see what's the equipment. Is equipment up to date? Is there connectivity in the plant? Are you collecting the information, and how are you collecting? Is it manual? Is it automatic? So those type of things. And then we just look at what is your growth opportunities, right? So if you invest in the technology, what is it going to do from a growth perspective? But that all kind of tie in together. So we look at those 5 areas of the organization, okay? And then and it's a series. There's only 40 questions really, and it's just and we kind of look at it, and we just look for that alignment, right? We say, okay, here's what you said. This is what we saw. This is where we think you kind of should be, right? And we kind of look at it from a maturity model, right? So how mature is the organization? They could have been around for a long time, but the systems, like the quality systems, or the some are not even running off of MRP, ERP systems. They're still running off of spreadsheets, right? Not a bad thing. It's just that they're just not, from a maturity model, they're just not that progressive, right?
From logistically, in terms of the assessment, you mentioned that there are 40 questions. Are we just talking the manufacturer can go to scmep.org and pull up the assessment and do it that way, or does it start with the conversation with you? Maybe is there an in-person meeting? What's that look like?
Yeah, so it's really meant to be in person, all right? So because it would be, it wouldn't do the assessment justice if we couldn't dialogue around it. If we answer the question, so, well, why did you answer it that way? We saw it this way. So the dialogue can get started. And that's really important, because then it's that credibility you're building up with the client that, oh yeah, I see where you're coming with it, right? Instead of just answering an online survey and then getting back some results, and then you're not 100% sure what the results are, right? So I think in person, majority of our assessments, or all our assessments, are meant to be in person, right? That's where the dialogue starts, and the clarity of why are you thinking that way, right? Why do you think data analytics is going to help change your world, right? And then you start pulling, and once you start getting that dialogue, then stuff starts rolling out. Doing it online, there's none of that conversation going on. They're just answering a question, and then when you get it, you go, "What do they mean by that?" Right? And then you have to make a second visit to find out what they meant by this. And I think it's more personable. I think it shows credibility with the staff and the field folks, and we get a bigger picture of what they're really going after. Right?
I want to switch gears just a little bit here. SCMEP, as I mentioned, and you all receive federal funding and state funding,
Sure.
and you're a nonprofit organization, but I'm wondering how SCMEP benchmarks itself in terms of knowing I had a successful year or we didn't have a successful year. And one of the ways you do it, I do know, is how many people you're touching base with, right?
Right.
How many conversations you have, regardless of what that conversation looks like, or what it's about. But it's touches.
It's touches.
It's touches. Is that the key to everything?
That's the key to get us started, right? Because it's the touches it's the critical piece. And a lot of times we'll go to the shows, or we'll have some we'll have some conferences or the state's loaded with places you can go, and that's where you start making your touches, right? Cold calling a company might take a little extra effort to get in there, but if I meet somebody personally, if I meet somebody at a workforce conference, for example, and they go, oh, MEP, and then you start that dialogue, then there's a spark of interest going, oh, well, I need you to come in and take a look at what I have, right? Just come in and take a look, and then we can carry it on from the second or third or fourth visit or whatever it takes, right? You build a relationship. That's clearly what you're doing. You're building relationships.
That's right. You've got a headquartered in Greenville, used to be Columbia, but headquartered in Greenville, office in Columbia, office in the Low Country.
Yeah, the Low Country is where we use SCRA building for training.
Yes,
right? We use that for our training centers.
That's right.
And now we've established a relationship with Horry Georgetown Technical College, where they'll allow us to use one of their training facilities, either in Georgetown or in Horry County or Conway. And we're taking training to the coast. So those that wouldn't have come this far inward, now we can take it to them.
Got it. Brian, let me take you here next. Before the show started, we were having a conversation, and you mentioned the 9 pillars of Industry 4.0. Can you remember 9 of them off the top of your head?
Well, I couldn't remember off the top of my head, but I can read them off this piece of paper.
Let's do it.
So we talk about data analytics,
yes,
which would lead you to some artificial intelligence, right? You have robotics, and now you got collaborative robots.
Can I ask you to stop there for a sec? The very first one again, data analytics. I mean, is that when we're getting into predictive analytics? You submit all of this data, and that data can then be turned in to make a prediction about what may or may not happen in the future.
Yeah,
is that what we're talking about?
That's what you talk about. That's what you're trying to forecast what's going to happen next,
yes,
right?
Exactly. So you can plan
that
for
may
it.
not be the predictive may be the better amount, right? So if I'm monitoring a machine, for example,
yes,
and I can pull a bunch of tags off the machine, and they're feeding some historian.
Right.
Someone in the AI world or the data analytics world can go in there and the data can start telling you, hey, you're starting to see a failure in the machine, and by the time you get to cycle 1000, you might want to consider changing something out, right?
I got you.
That's
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to clarify. Keep going.
You got the robots. You've got the cloud computing, which is your IT and your data processing, which is kind of goes along really with with data analytics. Augmented reality, virtual reality, which you mentioned in the beginning. Additive manufacturing, really very awesome.
3D printing?
3D printing, that's where it comes into play, right? So additive or 3D, that's the pillar. Digital twins and simulations,
yes,
where you can do that. Of course, you got industrial internet. It's the Internet of Things, right?
Yes.
Are you connected? Are you got sensors in places that you can pick up? And sensors have been around for a long, long time. It's just now we're using them to our advantage, right? And putting them in the right places. And then the cybersecurity, the cyber physical space,
it's more important every year.
That becomes like, all right, that's almost like one of the first pillars. That should be like a priority pillar with a lot of people.
Yes.
I'm gonna collect data, but I don't want nobody else to get it. So
right.
where am I gonna put it so they can, right? And then I should put it in the cloud. Then it becomes, so you see how some of these start to link together, right? When they start looking at it. So yeah,
exactly. There's one piece of technology that I always enjoy talking about, and it is smart apparel. And the more that I read and the more things that I see, the more smart apparel is becoming involved in the day-to-day manufacturing operation, whether that be boots or hard hats or goggles or whatever have you. Are you seeing a lot of that now?
I haven't seen a lot of smart apparel. It may be more of an industry phase, but I have not seen a lot of it. You got the Google glasses and you got those type of technologies. There are things you can put on the helmets, those type of things you can do, but that kind of technology is better. It's just kind of that stuff. But the actual clothing that can, monitor your body temperature, for example, or when you're getting into an environment that you should be getting into, right? To me, I always think of as the watches and the stuff that evolved, So wear a smart watch. I don't know if it's a smart watch or whatever, but it tracks. It tracks everything beyond the time of day, right?
Exactly.
So if my heart's elevating a little bit and it's giving me a signal to calm down, then that's probably what you see a lot of.
Right.
But
so Industry 4.0, I'll get you out of here on this. It's been doing this zigzag for years. This is the most important. No, let's go here, let's go here, let's go here, right? It just moves. Right. Can you give us an idea or maybe an example or two of something that is cutting edge today that we may know about tomorrow?
I don't know of anything, but I could just tell you that the technology of the 9 pillars, that changes so fast.
Yes.
Right? I kind of get used to like, oh, this can do this, this, and this, and then tomorrow now it can do this, this, and this. Right? So I thought, wow. Additive manufacturing is a good example. So it was at South Tech last week or 2 weeks ago, and there was a machine manufacturer doing hybrid additive manufacturing. They were literally laying beads of steel to build parts. I never seen that before. So that I'm thinking, when I'm thinking of the whole, I mean, you see video stuff, that people building houses with some type of material, but it's evolving that much. There was a time we could talk about a metal additive. Now we're doing it.
Yeah.
Now what's next? Right. Same way with the cobot technology and artificial intelligence. It's so evolving. You just got to keep up with that.
You got to hang on
cutting
tight.
edge. You just got to kind of keep up with what is already out there.
Right.
I haven't found any cutting edge ones because they're all just kind of like, I think I got one mastered. The next thing I know, I'm reading or seeing something else.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, oh, that's amazing. Why didn't I have that like a month ago when I was with a different client?
That's right.
Right? So you got to stay on top of what you have, and then how to figure out to make it fit your environment. So the assessment, the things like that, getting the subject matter experts on spot, on site, just to help you walk through all that.
Technology never slows down. It never stops. It just
Never
keeps
does.
moving fast, especially in the advanced manufacturing world. Brian Kuney, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You are welcome. That's Brian Kuney. He is the Regional Vice President, or one of the 7 Regional Vice Presidents at the South Carolina Manufacturing Extension Partnership. Thank you for joining us on another episode of Let's Talk Business South Carolina, and we will see you next time.